He called her predictable. He called her simple. He called her boring. In the cutthroat world of New York high finance, CEO Sebastian Beaumont saw his wife Elara as nothing more than a quiet domestic accessory. He told her to stay home from the biggest gala of the year, a night that could make or break his company, because she wouldn't fit in. But Sebastian is about to learn a brutal lesson. The woman he dismissed is the one who owns his entire world. The boring wife is here, and she's not here to save him. The penthouse smelled of money and disinfectant. Sunlight, cold and unforgiving, streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, catching the dust motes dancing over the white marble. It was the only uncontrolled thing in the entire apartment. Elara Beaumont watched them swirl her hand, frozen mid-motion, a simple ceramic mug clutched in her fingers. "Elara, are you even listening to me?" Sebastian's voice cut through the silence. It wasn't loud, but it had an edge, a polished impatience that had become the soundtrack of her marriage. Elara turned. Sebastian was standing by the chrome and glass dining table, knotting a silk Tom Ford tie. He was by any objective measure a handsome man. Dark hair, a sharp jaw, and the kind of restless, predatory energy that Wall Street mistook for genius. He was the CEO of Beaumont Dynamics, a tech logistics firm built on his charm and his father's connections. "I'm listening, Sebastian," she said. Her voice was soft, the one he expected. "The Vanguard Gala. You need the funding from Vance Capital." "I don't need it," he snapped, yanking the tie tighter. "It's a strategic partnership. Vance is the biggest whale in venture capital right now. This investment solidifies our new Asia expansion. It's vital, and that's why." He paused, giving her a slow, dismissive look. "You can't come." Elara's fingers tightened on the mug. "Oh, I wasn't aware I was invited." Sebastian laughed, a short, dry sound. "You weren't. This isn't one of your charity luncheons, darling. This is the big leagues. It's business, real business. You'd be bored. What would you even talk about, your sourdough starter?" He didn't wait for an answer. He strode over, plucked the mug from her hand, and set it down on the counter with a sharp clack. "And for God's sake, Elara, can you not wear that thing?" He gestured to her outfit. A simple, comfortable cashmere sweater in a muted beige paired with dark trousers. It was practical. It was her at-home uniform. "It's comfortable," she said quietly. "It's drab," he countered. "It's what my grandmother would wear, if she were still alive and had given up on life." He adjusted his cufflinks, the bespoke ones with the SB monogram. "I'm bringing Chloe, of course. She's been instrumental in the Vance proposal. She knows the language. She knows how to shine." Chloe Thorne, his vice president of marketing. Sleek, ambitious, and utterly contemptuous of Elara. Chloe, who wore tailored sheath dresses and smelled like expensive perfume and ambition. Chloe, who Sebastian had been working late with for the past 6 months. Elara felt the familiar cold knot tighten in her stomach, but her face remained a perfect placid mask. This was the bargain she had made. "Wasn't it, I'm sure she will be a great asset," Elara said, moving to pick up his discarded suit jacket from the back of a minimalist chair. She brushed a non-existent piece of lint from the shoulder. "You'll need your briefing notes for the 10 a.m. board call. They're on your desk next to your vitamins." Sebastian grunted, taking the jacket from her. "Right. See, this is what you're good at, Elara. The details, the home front. You keep my life running so I can go out and conquer the world. It's a partnership." He kissed the air somewhere near her cheek. "Don't wait up tonight. Chloe and I will be celebrating after we charm E. Vance." He paused at the door, his Maserati keys jingling in his hand. "Seriously, though, burn that sweater. It's depressing." The heavy door of the penthouse clicked shut, echoing in the vast, silent room. Elara stood motionless for a full minute. The silence settled around her, no longer oppressive, but expansive. She closed her eyes, letting the mask of the boring wife dissolve. The slight tremble in her hands stilled. She opened her eyes, and the placid beige-colored emptiness was gone, replaced by a gaze as sharp and cold as the winter light outside. She walked past the gleaming, untouched kitchen, down a hallway lined with abstract art Sebastian had bought, because an algorithm told him it was a good investment. She stopped at a plain white door at the far end of the hall. Sebastian thought this was her hobby room, where she did her little online bookkeeping courses. She pressed her thumb to a biometric scanner hidden in the doorframe. With a barely audible hiss, the magnetic lock disengaged. She stepped inside. The room was not beige. It was a command center. 3 monitors glowed with stock tickers, encrypted email clients, and secure video feeds. The wall to her right was a single massive whiteboard covered in complex investment strategies and corporate structures. Elara sat in the high-backed leather chair. She slipped on a pair of noise-cancelling headphones and initiated a secure video call. A moment later, a man's face appeared. He was in his late 60s, with kind eyes and a ruthlessly sharp legal mind. This was Arthur Pendleton, her chief counsel, and the only person on Earth who knew her entire story. "Good morning, Miss Vance," Arthur said, a small, wry smile playing on his lips. "Or is it Mrs. Beaumont right now?" Elara unpinned her simple brown hair, letting it fall to her shoulders. It was, Sebastian had once noted, aggressively normal. "It's Miss Vance from now on, Arthur," she said, her voice dropping an octave, losing its breathy, accommodating quality. "Sebastian just left. He told me I was too boring to attend the gala tonight." Arthur sighed. "Elara, I have to ask you one last time. Are you absolutely certain about this? We can just decline the proposal. We can short his stock and be done with it. You don't have to go through with this performance." "A performance?" Elara leaned forward. "No, Arthur. This isn't a performance. It's due diligence. I've spent 5 years conducting due diligence on my marriage. Tonight, I'm simply presenting my findings." She tapped a key, bringing up the Beaumont Dynamics file. "He's taking Chloe Thorne as his date. He's planning to charm me." "The man's arrogance is staggering," Arthur muttered. "He's trying to secure a $100 million investment from a woman whose name he can't even be bothered to research because he's too busy mocking his own wife." "His arrogance is his weakness," Elara said. "It's what I counted on when I first met him. It's what's going to make this so effective." She looked at the file, her expression hardening. "Now let's go over the final proposal from Beaumont Dynamics, the one I received. I found some discrepancies, starting with the wire transfers to an unsecured shell corp in the Caymans, the one registered to Chloe Thorne." "Oh dear," Arthur said, though he didn't look surprised. "He's not just an idiot. He's a thief. He's a thief who's about to ask his primary victim for a loan." Elara said, a predatory glint in her eyes. "Get the team ready. Send the Alessia Bianchi gown to my private suite at the St. Regis. And Arthur, yes, Elara, have my security detail meet me at the service entrance." Sebastian is expecting a mouse tonight. Let's give him a dragon. Elara Vance was not born powerful, but she was born patient. Her father, Thomas Vance, had been a brilliant but reclusive software engineer. He'd built an encryption algorithm that became the quiet, unseen backbone of half the world's financial institutions. He lived in a cluttered house in Seattle, drank cheap beer, and cared little for the billions his patent generated. He cared even less for his daughter, whom he'd sent to a modest boarding school after her mother died, and then promptly forgot about. When Thomas Vance died, Elara was 24, working as a quiet research assistant at the New York Public Library. Her father, in a final act of detached pragmatism, left her everything. Not just the money, but the company Vance Cybernetics. Elara, who had spent her life being invisible, suddenly had the means to be anything but. But she'd seen what money did. She'd seen the sycophants, the sharks, the immediate fawning insincerity. She wanted just once to be chosen for herself. So she split her life in two. By day, she was Elara Beaumont. She met Sebastian at a low-key charity auction, one she had funded anonymously. He was charming, ambitious, and saw her as a pretty, pliable, old money girl with a small trust fund, just enough to be respectable, not enough to be intimidating. He loved her simplicity. He loved her uncomplicated nature. He loved that she wasn't a threat. They married. She played the part of the perfect, supportive, boring wife. She managed his homes in the Hamptons, and the city organized his social calendar and cultivated the very drabness he now openly mocked. By night, in her locked office, she was E. Vance. She had taken her father's company, and with Arthur Pendleton's guidance transformed it. She didn't just license the algorithm, she used its profits to build a venture capital empire, Vance Capital. She invested in disruptive tech, green energy, and biomedical research. She was ruthless, intuitive, and most importantly, completely anonymous. She never did photo ops. She never attended galas. Her board meetings were held via secure video link. E. Vance was a phantom, a ghost in the machine of high finance, known only by her terrifying success rate and her first initial. This gala, the Vanguard Gala, was an exception. It was ostensibly to support the New York Innovation Fund, but the true purpose was to announce Vance Capital's new $100 million tech incubator. It would be E. Vance's first ever public appearance. And it just so happened that the man desperate for that incubator's first investment was her own husband. The irony was so sharp, it could cut steel. In her command center, Elara reviewed the numbers. Sebastian wasn't just skimming, he was gutting his own company. The reports he'd sent to his board were fantasies, inflated projections, ghost clients, and accounting errors that all conveniently padded the bottom line. The real books, which Elara's team had hacked in under an hour, showed a company bleeding cash. The money he was siphoning to Chloe's Cayman account wasn't just bonus money. It was the payroll tax. He was robbing his own employees to fund his escape. This changed everything. Her original plan had been simple: attend the gala, reveal herself, decline his proposal, and file for divorce. A clean, devastating break. But this was criminal. This wasn't just a bad husband. It was fraud. "Arthur," she said, her voice clipped. "He's leveraged the entire company against this investment. If we pull out, Beaumont Dynamics collapses. The board will be wiped out, and the employees— He has over 800 employees, Arthur. They'll lose their pensions. His creditors will seize the assets. Arthur confirmed, his face grim. He's used the employee pension fund as collateral for a high-interest bridge loan from a particularly nasty hedge fund, Kratos Global. If he defaults, which he will, when you decline, Kratos will liquidate the company by Monday. Elara's hand clenched. This was the man who complained that his coffee was 2 degrees too cold. The man who had mocked her for suggesting they support a local food bank. He's not just sinking his own ship, he's locked his crew in the brig, she whispered. So what's the play? Arthur asked. We can't in good conscience invest. It's a black hole. But if we don't, 800 people are on the street. Elara looked at the whiteboard. Her mind, usually so quick and decisive, was struggling. This was the conflict. The CEO in her said, "Cut it loose. It's a bad investment. Protect your capital." But the woman she had been the quiet observer, the one who noticed the name of their doorman's sick child. The one Sebastian ignored, that woman recoiled. "No," she said, her decision crystallizing. "We're not investing in him. We're acquiring the company. Right out from under him." Arthur's eyebrows shot up. "That's aggressive. Kratos Global won't let it go cheap." "Kratos doesn't know we have this." Elara tapped the screen, showing the fraud evidence. "Sebastian's loan agreement with them is predicated on his financials being accurate. They are not. He defrauded them too. When they find out, they'll want to dump their position before the SEC freezes the assets. They'll be looking for a quick, quiet exit." "You want me to call Kratos?" Arthur asked, a slow, predatory smile matching her own. "I want you to call them an hour before the gala. Tell them we, Vance Capital, are aware of the fraudulent filings. Offer to buy their entire debt position for pennies on the dollar to make their problem. And Sebastian, go away. They'll take it. By the time I walk into that ballroom, Vance Capital won't be a potential investor. We will be the new owners of Beaumont Dynamics." "Elara," Arthur said, his voice full of admiration, "that is terrifyingly brilliant." "It's just good business, Arthur," Elara replied, shutting down the file. "Sebastian always told me I didn't understand his world. It's time I showed him I'm perfectly fluent." She logged off, the screens going dark. She stood up and walked back into the sterile white penthouse. The beige sweater was still on the chair where she'd left it. She picked it up, walked to the kitchen's incinerator chute, and dropped it in. She watched the empty space for a moment, then turned to leave. She had a reservation at the St. Regis. It was time for E. Vance to get ready for her party. Sebastian Beaumont was flying. The 10 a.m. board call had been a masterpiece of tap dancing. He'd dazzled them with buzzwords, synergy, vertical integration, proactive expansion, and glossed over the hard numbers. They were old money dinosaurs. They didn't understand the speed of the new tech world. All they cared about was that the legendary E. Vance was considering them. "She's not just considering us gentlemen," Sebastian had boomed into the speakerphone from his corner office which overlooked Central Park. "She's courting us. The Vanguard Gala tonight. It's essentially a welcoming party. For me." Now he was in his Maserati, speeding toward his downtown tailor for the final fitting of his custom tuxedo. Chloe was on the phone, her voice a purr in his ear. "It went perfectly, Seb," she said. "They're eating out of your hand. Old money is so trusting." "It's not about trust, it's about vision. I have it, they don't." He swerved around a taxi, eliciting an angry honk. "Did you book the reservation at Perse for 9 o'clock? 9 o'clock for 2, the special table." A pause. "What about her?" Sebastian rolled his eyes, even though she couldn't see him. "Elara." "What about her?" "She'll be at home, probably reading a book or alphabetizing the pantry. She's fine. She's happy for me. It's just, she's your wife, Seb. Isn't it a little I don't know obvious that I'm on your arm at the biggest event of the year? It's smart, he corrected her. You're my VP. You did the work on the proposal. It shows a united front. Elara. God love her, she's a sweet girl, but she's not a shark. And tonight we are hunting. Besides, she hates these things. She gets all quiet and just stands there. It's embarrassing. Well, you look amazing, Chloe said. I saw the fabric swatch for your tux. That midnight blue is divine. I'll be in crimson. We'll be the talk of the town. We'll be the talk of Wall Street, Sebastian corrected her. Now I'm heading to the fitting. I'll see you at the St. Regis at 7. Don't be late. He hung up and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. He glanced at himself in the rearview mirror, flashing a brilliant white smile. He was the king of the world. Tonight, he'd secure the 100 million, and in 6 months, he and Chloe would be on a beach in Monaco. Elara. Well, he'd leave her the penthouse. He wasn't a monster. Miles away in a private wing of the St. Regis that cost more per night than Sebastian's car. Elara's own preparations were underway. There was no beige. There was no drab. The suite was filled with a quiet, focused team. A hairstylist who was usually reserved for A-list actresses, a makeup artist flown in from Paris, and 2 stoic security guards outside the door. Hanging on a mannequin by the window, catching the afternoon light, was the gown. It was not a boring wife dress. It was a custom creation from the Milanese designer Alessia Bianchi. Alessia owed Elara a favor after Vance Capital had quietly saved her fashion house from a hostile takeover. This gown was her thank you. It was made of a liquid emerald green silk that seemed to drink the light and throw it back, altered and more brilliant. It was structured with a sharp architectural bodice that swept off one shoulder and a skirt that fell in a clean, severe line to the floor, pooling in a small, elegant train. It was not a dress for a wallflower. It was armor. "The necklace, Miss Vance," said a quiet assistant, holding open a velvet box. Elara, her hair now styled in a sleek, severe chignon that highlighted her high cheekbones and intelligent eyes, nodded. Inside the box lay the Star of Aegis. It was a legendary piece, a massive, flawless, square-cut diamond, flanked by sapphires on a platinum chain. It was rumored to have belonged to Russian royalty. Vance Capital had acquired it at a private auction 3 months ago. Not as an investment, but as a statement. As the makeup artist applied a final bold slash of red lipstick, a color Sebastian had always told her was too garish for her. Elara felt the last vestiges of Mrs. Beaumont fall away. She had spent 5 years playing small, convincing herself that his casual cruelty was just the price of admission, that the partnership he described was real. She had wanted to be loved for her simple, quiet self. But Sebastian hadn't loved her simple, quiet self. He had used it. He'd seen her quietness not as strength, but as emptiness. Her patience not as a virtue, but as a vacuum he could fill with his own ego. He hadn't loved Elara. He had loved her submission. She stood, and her team helped her into the gown. The cool silk slithered against her skin. As the zipper closed, it felt like a lock clicking into place. She fastened the Star of Aegis around her neck. The weight of it was substantial, cold, and real. She looked in the mirror. The woman looking back was not Sebastian's wife. She was not the woman who alphabetized pantries. She was E. Vance. Her eyes were clear, her jaw was set, and she looked for the first time in 5 years, completely and utterly herself. Her phone buzzed on the vanity. A text from Arthur. "Kratos, deal closed. We are the new majority stakeholder of Beaumont Dynamics. The trap is set. See you on the battlefield." Elara smiled. The red lipstick was perfect. "It's time," she said to her security team. "Let's go to the gala." The Celestial Hall at the St. Regis was a testament to obscene wealth. 3-story-high ceilings dripped with crystal chandeliers. Waiters in crisp tuxedos floated through the crowd with trays of vintage Dom Perignon, and the low, confident murmur of the global elite filled the air. Sebastian Beaumont arrived at 7:05 p.m. He made an entrance, as he always did. Chloe Thorne was on his arm, a vision, in a skin-tight crimson dress with a slit that went dangerously high. Her black hair was severe, her lipstick dark. They looked like a matched set of very expensive, very dangerous knives. "Sebastian, darling." A society columnist, Deirdre Wall, air-kissed him. "You look like $1 billion, and Chloe stunning. Simply stunning." "We try, Deirdre," Sebastian said, flashing his perfect smile. "Big night for Beaumont Dynamics. Oh, we've all heard E. Vance in the flesh. It's all anyone can talk about. They say she's a complete recluse. Do you know what she looks like? We've been corresponding for months." Sebastian lied smoothly. "Let's just say she's a woman who appreciates results, and Beaumont Dynamics delivers." He spotted his rival Mark Jennings, CEO of a competing logistics firm, standing near the Raw bar. Jennings looked stressed, his suit ill-fitting. He was also vying for the Vance investment. Sebastian steered Chloe in that direction. "Mark, good to see you, old man," Sebastian said, clapping him on the back a little too hard. "Trying to catch the big fish, I wouldn't bother. I hear E. Vance is particular. She doesn't waste time with small fry." Mark Jennings bristled. "We're all here for the same reason, Sebastian. Don't count your chickens." "Oh, but mine are already counted hatched and laying golden eggs," Sebastian retorted, taking a champagne flute. "This is just a formality." Chloe laughed, a tinkling, supportive sound. "Sebastian is being modest. The Vance team was incredibly impressed with our projections." "I'm sure they were," Mark said sourly, looking at Chloe's dress. Just then, Deirdre Wall, the columnist, reappeared this time, with a younger, sharper-looking journalist in tow. "Sebastian, you must meet Camila Romero," Deirdre gushed. "She's doing a big Titans of Tomorrow piece for Forbes. You're a perfect subject." Camila Romero did not look impressed. She looked hungry. Her eyes were sharp, and she held a digital recorder. "Mr. Beaumont, Ms. Thorne, big night for you. The biggest—" Sebastian preened. "It's quite the statement, bringing your VP as your date," Camilla noted, her voice neutral. "Where's your wife tonight?" "Mrs. Beaumont, isn't it, Elara?" Sebastian actually laughed. It was a loud, dismissive braying sound that made several people turn. "Elara? Oh God, no." He leaned in as if sharing a charming conspiracy. "My wife is, well, she's wonderful. Truly. But she's the home and hearth type. You know, simple. Boring in the best possible way. She's happier at home, organizing my sock drawer or whatever it is she does. She wouldn't know what to do with herself here." Chloe smirked into her champagne glass. "She wouldn't fit in." Sebastian concluded, his voice full of mock affection. "It's not her world. Bless her heart." Camila Romero's eyes narrowed. She didn't laugh. She clicked her pen. "I see. So you handle the Shark Tank, and she handles the sock drawer." "Exactly," Sebastian said, pleased. "It's the perfect partnership." "How traditional," Camilla said. Her recorder was still on. "It works for us," Sebastian said, already bored with the topic. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I see the head of the fund. We'll see you after the announcement." He and Chloe swept away a triumphant crimson and midnight blue streak, leaving Camila Romero standing there, a thoughtful, dangerous look on her face. They worked the room for another 20 minutes. Sebastian was at the absolute peak of his arrogance. He was shaking hands, making promises, and accepting congratulations for a deal that hadn't even happened. He felt invincible. At 7:30 p.m., the lights in the ballroom dimmed slightly. A string quartet, which had been playing Vivaldi, came to a halt. The low murmur of the crowd died down. The head of the New York Innovation Fund, a man named Gerald Weston, stepped up to the podium. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the inaugural Vanguard Gala," Gerald began. "We are here to celebrate the future of technology, a future made possible by true visionaries. And tonight we are honored to be in the presence of one of the most visionary and famously private figures in modern finance." Sebastian nudged Chloe, a smug smile on his face. "This is it. Get ready. It is my profound honor," Gerald continued, "to introduce the benefactor of our new incubator, the founder and chief architect of Vance Capital. Ladies and gentlemen, making her first ever public appearance, please welcome Miss E. Vance." A single powerful spotlight hit the grand entrance at the top of the marble staircase. The room was so quiet, you could hear the clink of ice in a distant glass. Sebastian, Chloe, Mark Jennings, and the two journalists all turned their faces expectant, fixed on the top of the stairs. And then she appeared. The woman who stood at the top of the staircase was not a boring wife. She was a queen. The emerald green silk of her gown seemed to hum with its own power. The Star of Aegis necklace at her throat caught the spotlight and shattered it into 1,000 pieces, blinding the onlookers. Her hair was a sleek crown, her makeup was flawless, and her posture was pure, unadulterated power. She paused at the top step, her gaze sweeping over the room. It was not a nervous glance. It was an assessment. The hall was frozen. No one spoke. No one breathed. They were witnessing the unveiling of a myth. In the center of the room, Sebastian Beaumont's smug smile collapsed. His face went slack, his skin turning a sickly pale gray. The champagne flute in his hand tilted, spilling cold liquid over his fingers before he even realized it. "Seb," Chloe whispered, her hand gripping his arm. "Seb, that looks like—" "No," Sebastian whispered. It was a dry, rasping sound. "It's not. It's a coincidence. It's someone who... It's not her." But it was. Elara began her descent. She did not rush. She moved with a slow, deliberate grace, one hand lightly on the marble banister. Her eyes found Sebastian in the crowd. She held his gaze. She didn't smile. She didn't scowl. She simply held it. An executioner looking at the condemned. With every step she took, the fantasy Sebastian had built around himself crumbled. This was not Elara, his drab, simple domestic accessory. This was E. Vance, the most powerful investor in the country. The woman who organized his sock drawer was the same woman who held his entire company, his entire life, in the palm of her hand. The woman he had told to stay home, the woman he had just publicly mocked in front of a Forbes journalist, was the guest of honor. Clack! The sound of Sebastian's champagne flute shattering on the marble floor was deafening in the silence. Every head turned. First to the shattered glass, then to Sebastian's ashen, horrified face, and then finally to the magnificent woman in green who had just reached the bottom of the staircase. Camila Romero, the journalist, was already writing her expression one of stunned, predatory delight. This was no longer a Titans of Tomorrow piece. This was the story of the decade. Gerald Weston, oblivious to the personal drama unfolding, rushed to Elara's side. "Ms. Vance, welcome. We are so honored." "Thank you for having me, Gerald." Elara's voice rang out clear and cold, amplified by the room's acoustics. It was not the soft, mousy voice Sebastian was used to. This was the voice of a boardroom killer. She turned her gaze away from Sebastian as if he were nothing more than a piece of furniture, and addressed the crowd. "Good evening," she said. "Vance Capital has always believed that true innovation doesn't come from noise. It comes from substance. It comes from the quiet, relentless pursuit of a better future." As she spoke, Arthur Pendleton, her lawyer, materialized at her side, along with 2 of her personal security team. They flanked her, forming an impenetrable wall. Sebastian, jolted back to life by the sound of her voice, began to push his way through the crowd. Chloe, her face a mask of terror and confusion, was dragged in his wake. "Elara," he hissed, grabbing her arm. "Elara, what is this? What is this sick, twisted costume? What are you doing?" Elara stopped speaking. She turned very slowly to look at the hand Sebastian had placed on her arm. She raised her eyes to his. "Mr. Beaumont," she said, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper that only he and Chloe could hear. "You are touching me." Sebastian recoiled as if he'd been burned, snatching his hand back. This isn't possible," he stammered, his eyes wild. You're my wife. You make pot roast." "I am Vance," Elara said, her voice returning to its full, clear volume for the room to hear. "Founder of Vance Capital, and as of an hour ago, the new owner of Beaumont Dynamics." The silence that followed Elara's proclamation was absolute. It was a void, a vacuum that sucked all the air and polite chatter from the celestial hall. Mark Jennings, Sebastian's rival, choked on a shrimp. Deirdre Wall's jaw was on the floor, and Camila Romero was typing so fast into her phone it looked like it might catch fire. Chloe Thorne was the first to break. "You're lying!" she shrieked, her voice high and desperate. "Sebastian, she's lying. This is insane." "Tell them, Seb." Sebastian just stared, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound coming out. He was a fish pulled from the water, gasping on the deck. "Lying," Elara repeated, tasting the word. She turned her cold, analytical gaze on the crimson-clad woman. "Miss Thorne, you are the VP of Marketing, correct? Then you should understand what a leveraged buyout is." She nodded to her lawyer. Arthur Pendleton stepped forward, a slim leather folio in his hand. "As of 6:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time." Arthur announced his voice, the calm, reasonable thunder of a senior partner. Vance Capital acquired the full debt portfolio of Beaumont Dynamics from Kratos Global as Mr. Beaumont leveraged the entirety of the company's assets and its pension fund against that debt. His default, which was imminent, has triggered the acquisitions clause. Vance Capital has taken control of the board effective immediately. Default. What default? Sebastian finally found his voice. The investment. You were the investment. This is a conflict of interest. No, Elara said simply. It was a test. And you failed. She turned back to the stunned crowd. My apologies for the interruption. As I was saying, Vance Capital is looking for substance, which is why my first act as the new head of Beaumont Dynamics will be to correct a Significant error. She looked directly at Chloe. Ms. Thorne, Elara said, your projections for the Asia expansion were fiction. Creative, certainly. But fiction. And the consulting fees routed to your private shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. That's not fiction. That's fraud. Chloe went from crimson to snow white. I don't know what you're talking about. You don't? Elara's voice was laced with ice. Then let me refresh your memory. Arthur handed a single-page printout to one of Elara's security guards. The guard walked calmly over to Chloe and handed it to her. It was a wire transfer receipt. From Beaumont Dynamics to Thorne Consulting LLC, Grand Cayman, dated 2 days ago, for $2.5 million. Chloe looked at the paper, and a small, strangled sound escaped her. She wasn't a shark. She was just a remorer, and her shark was dying. Sebastian, Chloe whimpered, turning to him. Do something. Sebastian, however, was in his own private hell. He was looking at his wife, the woman he'd called boring, just hours ago, and seeing her for the first time. He saw the intelligence he'd mistaken for passivity. He saw the power he'd mistaken for dullness. And he saw the cold, righteous anger he had spent 5 years cultivating. Elara, please, he whispered, a word he hadn't used in his entire marriage. Please don't do this. Not here. We can talk about this. At home. We're married. Home, Elara said. You mean the penthouse that my father's company paid for? You mean the partnership where you mock me to journalists while you steal from your own employees? She gestured to Camila Romero, who was soaking up every word. That's right, Mr. Beaumont. I was standing right behind you at the bar. Bless her heart, I believe you said, the woman who organizes your sock drawer. A collective gasp went through the crowd. This was better than theater. Sebastian, Elara said, her voice final. You didn't just underestimate me. You mistook my patience for permission. You mistook my silence for stupidity. You thought I was your boring wife. She leaned in the star of Aegis, glittering dangerously. I am not your wife. I am your new boss. And your first and final act as CEO of my company will be to escort Miss Thorne out of this building. My security team will assist you. The 2 guards stepped forward. You can't do this, Sebastian roared, his facade of charm finally cracking, revealing the terrified, spoiled man underneath. I built that hair company, it's mine. You built it on lies, Elara countered, and you were about to abandon it. I am saving it. Now get out. You are trespassing. Sebastian looked wildly around the room. All his friends, his colleagues, everyone was staring. No one moved to help him. They looked at him with a mixture of pity-scorn, and from Mark Jennings, undisguised, rapturous glee. Defeated, humiliated, and utterly broken. Sebastian Beaumont turned. The 2 security guards fell in step on either side of him and Chloe. They were not touching them, but their presence was an iron wall. The entire gala watched as the CEO, who had arrived like a king, was marched ignominiously through the crowd past the raw bar and out the main doors, his crimson-clad mistress stumbling behind him. The heavy doors of the celestial hall thudded shut. A moment of stunned silence. Then Elara turned back to the podium, a small, satisfied smile on her face. Now, she said to the room at large, my apologies. Let's talk about the future of real innovation. The crowd didn't just applaud, they erupted. The gala ended, but the story was just beginning. By 9 a.m. the next morning, Camila Romero's article for Forbes.com had gone viral. The headline was devastating: CEO mocked boring wife at gala hours before she was revealed as E. Vance, the secret investor who bought his company. The story included Sebastian's exact quotes about the sock drawer and, bless her heart, contrasted with the verbatim transcript of Elara's corporate execution. The stock market, which respects power and detests fraud, reacted instantly. When the market opened, Beaumont Dynamics stock, which Elara had just acquired, shot up 30% on news of new competent leadership. Sebastian, meanwhile, found himself in a world he didn't recognize. When he'd tried to return to the penthouse the night before, his key fob had glowed red. Denied. The doorman, the same one Sebastian had never bothered to learn the name of, had politely informed him that Ms. Vance had restricted all access. Now he was sitting in a sterile downtown coffee shop, staring at his phone, watching his life evaporate. He had 342 missed calls, mostly from angry board members, creditors, and his father. A man in a sharp, dark suit slid into the booth opposite him. It was Arthur Pendleton. "Sebastian," Arthur said, his tone polite. He placed a thick, leather-bound file on the table. "Elara Ms. Vance asked me to deliver these to you personally." "Where is she?" Sebastian rasped. "She can't just do this." "The prenup I get half." Arthur sighed, as if explaining a complex topic to a very slow child. "Sebastian, you are in a great deal of trouble, so I will be very clear. Let's start with the prenup." He opened the file. "The 2020 prenuptial agreement, which you insisted upon, has a standard infidelity clause. A clause which you, well, chatard would be the operative term. We have receipts from Per Se, the St. Regis, and a jeweler in the Diamond District for one C. Thorne, all paid for with a joint marital account. That alone is enough to void your claim." Sebastian's face paled. "But," Arthur continued, "it gets worse. This," he tapped the file, "is the second document. Divorce papers. Elara has filed on grounds of adultery and fraud. She is not seeking alimony. She is, however, petitioning to have all assets acquired during the marriage, including the Hamptons house and the art collection, returned to her as they were purchased with funds she can prove were commingled from her private premarital accounts. She told me that was a small trust fund. Elara is a very private woman. You mistook her privacy for a lack of resources. A fatal error." Arthur slid a third document across the table. "This, however, is the one you should be most concerned with." Sebastian looked at it. It was a subpoena from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. "The wire transfers to Ms. Thorne's shell company," Arthur explained. "The fraudulent projections you sent to the board, the Kratos Global loan which you secured using your employee's pension fund as collateral that Sebastian is highly illegal. The SEC is freezing your personal assets as of right now." Sebastian's phone vibrated. A bank alert. His checking account had been frozen. "Elara has already met with the new board of Beaumont Dynamics," Arthur said, standing up. "She presented them with two options. Either they cooperate fully with the SEC's investigation into you, or Vance Capital would dissolve the company and sell it for parts. They chose wisely." She's feeding me to the wolves," Sebastian whispered, horrified. "No," Arthur said, buttoning his jacket. "She's just opening the cage. You fed yourself. The fraudulent financials, the affair, the arrogance. Elara didn't do this to you, Sebastian. She just turned on the lights." Sebastian looked down at the papers. He was ruined. He had no company, no money, no wife, and he was likely going to prison. "Why?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Why did she stay 5 years? Why?" Arthur paused at the end of the booth. "You know, she asked me the same question once. She said she kept hoping you'd see her, the real her, that you'd stop looking past her, and one day just see. She wanted to be loved for who she was, not what she had." He put a $20 bill on the table. "For your coffee. It seems you're a little short on funds." Arthur walked out, leaving Sebastian Beaumont alone in the coffee shop, a titan of tomorrow who had just learned the most brutal lesson of all: never ever underestimate the boring wife. 6 months had passed. The 70th floor corner office, once Sebastian's dark cavern of mahogany narcissism and borrowed prestige, was unrecognizable. The heavy oppressive desk where he had practiced his boardroom king persona was gone, donated to a charity auction. In its place stood a long, sleek table of reclaimed pine and polished steel, a piece that was both beautiful and functional. The walls were no longer covered in abstract art he'd bought as investments. They were smart glass, currently displaying a live, transparent data feed of global shipping routes, green energy efficiency ratings, and cargo manifests. The company itself rebranded from Beaumont Dynamics to the simple, powerful Vance Logistics was breathing clean air for the first time. And in the center of it all, in a chair that valued ergonomic design over intimidation, sat Elara Vance. She wore a simple, elegant navy blue sheath dress and a small, delicate platinum chain. The Star of Aegis was locked in a vault, its purpose as armor now fulfilled. Her hair was down, falling in its natural wave. She looked at peace, focused. She was not the pouring Elara, a ghost in her own home. She was not the avenging angel in emerald silk. This was the woman who had been there all along, the one who built an empire in secret. This was just Elara. The audit had been brutal. Sebastian's genius had been a house of cards built on fraud, nepotism, and robbing his own employees' futures. Elara's first 2 months as owner had been a corporate triage. She fired Sebastian's entire inner circle of yes-men, the ones who had enabled his worst impulses. She fully restored the employee pension fund, a move that cost her 8 figures from her personal accounts, but instantly earned her the fierce, unwavering loyalty of her 800 employees. And she had promoted from within. There was a polite knock on her open door. "Ms. Vance, your 11 o'clock is here." "Thank you, Maria. Send him in." Maria Sanchez. Elara's new chief operating officer smiled and nodded. Maria had been a mid-level analyst in the accounting department for 10 years, repeatedly passed over for promotion by Sebastian, who on the rare occasion he mentioned her, called her that quiet numbers lady. Elara, in her first review of the books, had recognized Maria's brilliance and her neatly kept shadow ledger detailing Sebastian's financial crimes in under an hour. A moment later, Mark Jennings walked in. The former rival CEO looked like a different man. The stress was gone, his ill-fitting suit replaced by a sharp, tailored one. "Elara," he said, shaking her hand warmly. He no longer called her Ms. Vance. "Mark, good to see you. How is our new East Coast consortium?" "Thriving," he said, taking the seat opposite her. "Your buyout of Beaumont? Well, Vance Logistics. Now it was like lancing a boil. You didn't just save this company. You stabilized the entire sector. Our joint shipping lane initiative is already outperforming projections by 15%. He grinned. "Real projections, I mean, not the creative kind." We had good bones, Mark, and good people like Maria, who were just waiting for a chance to do their jobs properly. Sebastian was the only thing holding this place back. Well, to that, Mark raised an imaginary glass. I'm not just here for the logistics report, Elara. He paused, and for the first time, Elara saw the confident CEO replaced by a slightly nervous man. It was a fascinating and frankly endearing sight. Sebastian had never been nervous. His arrogance had been a blunt instrument. Mark was thoughtful. I was wondering, he said, if you... Well, I'm attending a concert at the Lincoln Center on Friday. A performance of Arvo Part's Tabula Rasa. It might be a bit minimalist or boring for some, but I find it structural. Elara finished for him, a small, genuine smile touching her lips. And incredibly peaceful. I know his work. It's brilliant. Mark's face lit up with surprise and pleasure. You do? That's fantastic. I was wondering if you would like to join me. Just as Mark. Not as a CEO. Elara let the request settle. He had used the word boring, not as a mockery, but as a small, vulnerable confession of his own genuine taste, worried she might find it lacking. He was treating her not as a mythical investor or a wallflower, but as a person. He was asking, not assuming. Mark, she said, her voice warm. I would like that very much. He beamed, finalized their plans, and left the office with a new spring in his step. After he was gone, Elara looked down at a file on her desk. It was the final report from her legal team, closing the loop on the divorce and the SEC investigation. The final accounting was complete. Faced with a mountain of irrefutable evidence, the wire transfers, Maria's shadow ledger, and Chloe's full panicked confession, Sebastian had taken a plea deal. He was currently serving a 24-month sentence in a low-security federal prison for wire fraud and embezzlement from the pension fund. Chloe, having testified against him, received 5 years probation, full financial restitution, and a permanent ban from the financial industry. The last Elara had heard, she was a shift manager at a cosmetics counter, her crimson dresses and Cayman accounts a distant memory. Elara felt no surge of triumph. Not anymore. It wasn't about revenge. It was about consequences. A balanced ledger. She closed the file. It was done. Her phone buzzed on the desk. A text message. It was from Camila Romero, the Forbes journalist. They had developed a friendship over the past few months built on a mutual respect for a well-executed plan. The text read, "Got a hot tip from a source inside FCI Otisville. Your ex has a new title, kitchen staff. Sources say he's in charge of pot roast." Elara stared at the text. Pot roast, the meal she used to make that he'd called pedestrian. The irony was so perfect, so utterly mundane, it was hilarious. A small chuckle escaped her. Then another. Then for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Elara Vance leaned back in her chair in her sunlit office, surrounded by the Emma she had built and reclaimed, and laughed. It was not the laugh of a vengeful wife or a ruthless CEO. It was the free, unrestrained and joyful sound of a woman who was at long last completely and utterly herself. And that's the end of Elara's story. But it's the beginning of her new life. She didn't just get revenge. She got her life back. She exposed a fraud, saved a company, and protected 800 jobs, all while taking out the trash. Elara's story is a powerful reminder that the people who are overlooked, the ones called quiet or simple, are often the ones with the most strength biding their time. The world is full of Sebastians who mistake kindness for weakness, but karma, as Elara proved, always has a plan. What did you think of Elara's reveal? Was it the perfect payback? Let me know your favorite part in the comments below. Your support is everything to this channel. So please don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs a good karma story, and definitely hit that subscribe button. Thank you for listening.